Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Continuum Podcast. Today, I'm really, really excited to have Sean Lally's here. Sean Lally started training with me in my martial arts school. We were talking about 2007, 2008, and we've had a lot of crazy, great times. We got a lot to talk about. And Sean, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great, Greg. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited. On my way up, driving up, I was just thinking of all the different times we've had, experiences we've shared, conversations, the laughs, the tough times, and it was just cool to kind of replay some of those things in my head coming up here, and I was excited just to come up and have a conversation with you.
Yeah, same here, man. I had about 2 hour and 45-minute drive, and I was also reminiscing about the gym, the characters back in the day, and we'll get into all of that kind of stuff. We can talk about a little bit of that history because we have some history together. The one thing I'd always say is, Sean has always been really just a really good friend. Aside from me being his coach, I think there's a connection between you and I that it never broke down, really. I mean, we've had our hard times. We've had things that didn't work out, things that did, and through it all, here we are. And I don't think there's never really been any kind of reason to fight or anything about it. I think some interesting parallels, and we'll get into them. I'll just say that I think I was growing in MMA. I was beginning in MMA when you started at 17, and by you starting at 17, it was obviously your start in MMA. You did some martial arts before that, but I'd never coached cage fighters before, and you were one of my first. So we were both growing the same, and we had a lot of experiences together. Made some mistakes, you, me, everybody. But that's how you grow, and that's how you get better. So
that's what I was gonna say too. That's how you learn.
Yeah,
that's how you grow, and it's gonna happen. I mean, we've had so many, like you said, we had a lot of real positive times, maybe a few. I don't even want to call them negative, right? Because like you were saying, that energy between us is special. Yeah. I felt like my father shared that within this circle too.
100%.
The same energy that you and I share. I know you and him shared, which was he was a big part of our whole relationship too.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was mistakes made, and I continued to make mistakes in my MMA career after, right?
Yeah.
And that's how you learn, because you don't know till you know.
You know what?
Right.
And yeah, and I want to just, I have a feel, I know we're going to go down that path. And your father was, I considered him a great friend, and utmost respect for him, always. And yeah, I can't look at you without thinking about him, which is a real compliment, because I know how much he loved you. So we made mistakes. We had some success. I went on to coach a bunch of really good fighters and have a fairly successful team, well-respected team in the North Country, which is not easy. And you got onto the Contender Series for the UFC, which only a very small part of the population can achieve that. So huge, tremendous pride in having you start at my gym, but then move out of town and do that. So tell me a little bit about the Contender Series and some of the success there for the UFC.
For sure. And I was just going to touch up real quick on the fact that it all started at Kaze. And I always wanted you to understand that was something that was important to me. I know coming on to the Contender Series, we talked about that. Like, you got this whole wild ride started for me. And I remember, and I have a lot of respect still for you because of this conversation, particularly where you told me you're going to outgrow me, right? You sat me down, you had that conversation, because like we were talking off air earlier, you were just touching up on just like my athleticism and stuff. You saw that in me, and you pushed me in the right direction, and you gave me opportunities that showed me that I can do this thing, and I am pretty good, right? And that kind of started this whole thing, this whole ride. And yeah, I would say kind of a couple peak points of my career. I won a New England title. I was number 1 in New England for a long time at welterweight. I think it's still top 10 in 185, even though I haven't fought in 185 in years. Had the opportunity to fight for Bellator, and then the Contender Series, right, where I had a 3-round back and forth fight with Chris Curtis, who's currently in the UFC. He's done very well.
Unbelievable. Action,
Multiple
man.
finishes. I mean, he looks great.
And I thought he won his last fight,
I
which was
agree.
last week. I watched that, and I'm a big fan.
That was a hell of a fight, huh?
I lost on DraftKings.
Oh,
I'm not
man.
going to hold it against him because I thought he won.
Yeah,
But yeah, he's an amazing fighter.
he is. His
Yeah.
boxing for MMA, his defensive game. Anyway, I could talk about his fights, but had a great opportunity
Yeah.
at the Contender Series. Got to fight in front of Dana White. Right? That was a lifelong dream and opportunity.
Yeah. I remember meeting you out in Vegas.
I was thinking about that on the way up.
I got a picture of us hanging
What
out.
were you doing in Vegas? You were just there?
No comment.
Yeah, okay.
I think I
You
was.
just came to have a coffee with me.
I love Vegas, man. Yeah, I would, man. If it's Vegas,
I know.
yeah.
Yeah,
If it's Boston, yeah, probably Boston. But
Portsmouth, you're here.
yeah. So the best places in the world, yes. North Country, nah. You gotta come see me up there.
Right.
But Vegas, I think I was out with my daughter and I were out there for some
Yeah.
kind of, she had a convention and I tagged along. I love Vegas. I used to live in California about 3 hours away. So I know it well and I love Vegas. So when know that you were out there, it was like, we got to just hook up, and we did. We got
I think
coffee.
we met the night before.
We got a coffee together.
Yeah, we did. We
Yeah.
went to Starbucks near the Ferris wheel, right next to the Flamingo there.
Right.
Yeah, right on the strip.
Yeah, it was cool, man. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. So, I mean, you had great success in New England. You went on to fight in Bellator. You went on to fight in the Contender Series. Now you got a great family. I know your daughter. I run into her once in a while up in the North Country. Yeah,
you could
and
keep an eye out for her.
I always do, man. Everybody looked out for my kids growing
Yeah,
up. Like
sure.
everybody knew I was an MMA coach, and yeah, nobody messed with my kids too much.
Right.
But
As she gets older, all the kids will recognize, oh, that's your daddy and his friends?
yeah,
Like, oh, okay.
yeah, yep. Beware.
Yeah, be careful.
So it's a good thing, man. Sometimes it keeps guys from dating them, but my kids hold that against me. Like nobody wanted to date me, but my guys
go one
looked out.
round with me in the garage, and then you can take her out for dinner.
That's right. If you
And
last.
I'm coming to dinner.
So yeah, man, you got a family now. You just had a baby.
I did.
You own a business. You're married. You got. I mean, I could be happy for your success in the cage, but I'm really happy for the family's success, for the success of the business and all that. So, congrats. How does it feel to be a father? How much of a role? How important is that role in your life?
I mean, it's
Obviously, everything.
my number one
Yeah.
priority and focus right now. I mean, my business is a huge focus too, right? There's a reason I've stepped away from MMA a bit, but I do stay active and train. And I'm not saying I'm done with my MMA career, because most likely I'll be getting in there, at some point, a couple more times to finalize that chapter. But my family is the most important thing to me. And I remember making a conscious effort and transition about 4 years ago. And it was around the time I met my wife. We had an instant connection. She was a huge support for me in my recovery and along that journey too. And we work well as a team together. And we both wanted a family, right? So when you find someone like that and you can work, and then you can create this together, which is really cool, right? Because you can create success as a martial artist, or you can build a business, but to create a family, and then to be able to sit back and like just take it in, right? Where it's like, I do this sometimes when I have my wife, my baby, my 7-year-old daughter, I got the dog, right? We're all out on a walk together, and it's like, you built this tribe. Like, that's sick. Like that you came together and you built this little tribe of people. We probably have more kids too, we'll see, God willing. But it's just amazing. And some days are challenging as hell.
Yeah.
But so is anything else. There's nothing that's worth it in life that doesn't require an extreme amount of hard work, stress, challenges. I mean, you name it, right? You want to run your own business. You want to be a successful athlete. You want to have a family. Like, yeah, there's going to be some problems to overcome along the way.
Yeah.
And there's nothing better. We talked about before we had a baby and the roles we would play, and if we were going to have a baby, right, how it would all work. Because everyone's got different plans. Some people don't want to stay home and take care of the kids and make dinners and stuff. That's cool, right? But we knew kind of going into this, I mean, she takes care of the baby. I work a decent amount running my business. There's times where I have to end up working where it wasn't expected, right? And she's taking care of the baby. And I know she's going to make an awesome dinner. I mean, she's Greek, so she cooks some good food, right?
Goodness.
But we support each other, right? And that's so important. You have to have that on the other side. And then it makes you want to, and to me, have to continue to be better and to show up. You don't have the option at some point of not showing up. Like, I used to not be able to show up for myself for like 2 weeks.
Right.
Like, try not showing up for an hour with a big family and people expecting you to show up and needing you to.
And that's showing up emotionally as well as physically.
Yes, 100%.
Like both.
Yeah, for sure.
Still working on that.
Oh, yeah. But my wife was showing me some clothes she bought for the baby the other day. And I was like, it was like last night, and I'm looking through these and I was like, oh, that's nice stitching. And she's like, what the are you talking about? And I was like, I just didn't know what to say. I wanted to like pretend I cared, but
but
I was just like, oh, they're nice. Like,
I could care.
I like the fabric.
She could walk around the burlap sack. She'd still be cute.
If it was just me, she'd be in a diaper all day.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. And 2 girls, like me having 2 girls. We were just talking about that. One of your kids is at the age when my daughter was that age when we met. Yeah. So it's a trip, man. This is like this full circle, and God willing, I'll record. You can record me in a podcast when I'm 60. When you're 60, because I turned 60 this month. So that'll be like, craziness. So another, not to move on from this conversation, but another part of your life, a big part of your life, is the military. And I remember, you going into the military, and what prompted you to. One of your success, like, we're sitting next to an Army Ranger. There's another elite group of people, that we talked about. Business owner, family man, UFC fighter, and now, if you look back, Army Ranger. Like, not everybody has all these, can check these things off. So tell me a little bit what it was like to be an Army Ranger and how that came about.
Yeah, so I always wanted to join the military when I was younger. My dad was in the Marines. Actually, most of my family were Marines, like uncles, grandfathers in the Army. I have a cousin, he's in the Marines. So decent amount of military in the family. And then at some point, as a kid, I always wanted to be in the military. And then at some point in like my early teen years and up until shortly before I graduated high school, I wasn't really interested in it anymore. But I started filling out college applications because that was just the thing to do. But I didn't even take like the SATs or anything. I was barely showing up to high school and barely getting by at that time. So I kind of turned gears and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna join the Army because I thought about it. And my buddy Derek and myself got in touch with a recruiter. We met up with him, and I enlisted in the Army the next day.
That quick?
That quick.
Wow.
I didn't ask a lot of questions. I just wanted to be infantry. All I wanted to do was be in combat. That was my main goal for being in the military. Yep. So they asked what job, like, I wanted to chase, I guess, a different style of fighting, right? And I wanted to do the most intense version and option of that. It's like, I'm not going to join the Army to cook. I can be a cook somewhere else. That's how my mind works. And nothing wrong with that. We need those cooks. They cook some good food, but
they gotta feed
I wanted to shoot big guns and blow things up, right? Because that's what my mind goes to. When you play Army as a kid, you're not like the Army cook.
I remember because you were training with me. So you started training with me at 17, and you went into the Army at what, 18, 19?
18. So I spent the summer after high school at home.
Yep.
And then I joined the Army. So I didn't really know what I was getting into. I did some study and learned. I wanted to be a ranger specifically, but I hadn't gotten guaranteed to go to RASP, which is the Ranger Assessment and Selection Program.
Right.
Because there's certain physical standards, there's certain test standards that you have to pass in order to be able to join the program. So went in, I went to basic training. I went to infantry school. From there, I went to airborne school. And there was some waiting periods in between. I had to wait on base. So all that took like maybe 6 months, something like that. And pretty intense training, the infantry school at Fort Benning. And then at that time, it was kind of like I had all the tests passed to be able to go to RASP. And I remember having this phone conversation with my dad because I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be airborne. I'm going to go to my unit. Like, because to imagine 8 weeks of the most intense training after already training for 6 months, I just wanted to get to my duty station and start my career.
Yeah.
Right? So to think that you have to go through 2 more months, but he was the one that actually pushed me to, you know what, stay in. You're going to regret it if you don't.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was kind of just like a weak decision on my part that I definitely would have regretted, where I just wanted an out. I wanted the suffering to be over.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, sure. Well, you're 18.
Yeah, I'm 18, man.
I remember you call. I don't know if you called me up or how it got back to me, but you told me you wiped out everybody in your platoon.
I did. In
like
combatives.
Combatives.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember. Hey, Sean, just let me. I don't know if maybe your father told me.
Yeah.
Probably your dad was swinging by the gym. Like,
for sure.
I just heard from Shawnee. He said he wiped out this whole platoon in combat.
I did.
That's MMA, baby.
did.
That's Kaze.
Right. And it wasn't as mainstream then, right? So not everyone and their mother was doing jujitsu. It was like a lot of guys that didn't know what they were doing. I remember when I first got to the Army, that's how I made friends because I was quiet, a little bit of a shy kid normally, and especially in new settings, and just trying to observe and watch how everybody moves and stuff. But that's how I started. Guys were wrestling, and I was getting in there wrestling like these big dudes from New York and all these kids, and and I was a skinny like 18-year-old that no one expected to be as scrappy as I was. So that got me some, some recognition and some respect among my peers.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, I did RASP. I mean, that was some of the most challenging physical, mental tests of my life. I learned a lot during that time. And after I graduated RASP, I think it was 4 months, and I was in Afghanistan.
Wow.
As a private. So they train you, and they get you over there.
So you're talking about a year.
Yeah, I'm talking about a year.
Sign up, a year later, you're in Afghanistan.
I turned 20 in Afghanistan.
Did you see action over there?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what an Army Ranger's job is. It's an elite infantry unit. Yep. They're looking for specific targets. And at the time, it was pretty surreal because I was a private, right? I had minimal experience. I could shoot my M4. I could shoot mortars. I was trained in different defensive driving tactics, but I was very new.
Yeah.
And like anything else, until you do it live, that's where you really learn. So over there, I mean, it was pretty intense from the start. And I was just do what you're told. Stay moving. Follow the guy in front of you. And that's all. But I mean, I was in these rooms with like operatives explaining we're hunting for so-and-so. He's been an IED facilitator in this area for 10 years, landing on targets. We had fair share of firefights. It was a pretty intense experience.
Wow. Wow. I think we'll talk about this a little later, but I remember you coming back, and I'll never forget, we were going to, I think it was Allen or Logan's MMA fight in Vermont, and you were just out of the service. And did you experience PTSD?
I'd say so.
I'd say so too, because I'll never forget. I don't know if you remember this. Part of the equipment fell and made a loud banging noise, and your reaction, I can't even describe it. But you went into a mode that it just shook me to the core. Like I was like, holy, like Sean just like you just went into alert. Like I was behind you.
Right. Like, you're like, I got your 6. You thought shit was going down too. I don't remember that, Greg, but it makes sense, right? Because
yeah, no, totally.
I remember being over there and getting off a helicopter. I mean, I truly accepted and was okay with the fact that I would die over there. Right? At 19 years old, and it would be an honorable death.
Yeah.
right? They want guys to think like that,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And I just remember just when I would get into our landing zone and stuff, just being a different person, right? Where you become like disconnected from who you are and almost robotic in a way because you have to.
Yeah.
Because in a fight, you have to be like that. And I bring that same intensity into the
Animalistic.
cage.
An animal that works on instinct, not on thought.
And that you can die,
Yeah.
right? That's like the risks.
Yep. Wow, man, it was intense. It was definitely intense. So yeah, a great career. In the military. You mentioned to me earlier that it ended a little bit too soon, and I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the things. A big reason why I want you here to talk a little bit about. You mentioned you're in recovery, and I got to say, of all of your accomplishments, I think the thing I'm most proud of you, not that I'm somebody who needs to be proud of you for anything, but as a friend and I don't look at you as a student. I look at you as an equal right now, and I have for a while. I don't like to put myself into this I'm the great coach thing. We know plenty of other people that like to do that. I want to show you something.
Yeah, let me show you something.
So, so I do. I try to think of people as equals and give them everything I can, and it's mutual. And I think, the thing I'm most proud of is your sobriety, and the fact that that I know you had some rough times in the past, and I know I probably have told you before, but I'll tell you right now, I admire you for being who you are right now, and for having gone through what you've gone through. And we do need to talk about it a little bit. We don't need to tell all the horror stories or anything, but tell me a little bit about your upbringing and what it was like and how you got involved in substance misuse and some of the perils that kept you from being maybe shortened your career in the military.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll start a little bit early, kind of go through where I grew up and things like that. I was born in Massachusetts. I grew up in northern New Hampshire. So we moved up there when I was about 4. We moved around a lot as kids, but it was normal. I think me and my sister counted one time. It was like, I think we moved like 19, 20 times before I graduated high school.
Wow.
Right. So sometimes in the same town, different apartments, different houses, wherever we got pushed. But with that being said, I mean, my mom did a great job of making sure we were happy. She always, I don't know how she did it sometimes. I got a lot of respect for her, but we didn't have a lot of money necessarily. We weren't aware of it until I moved and went to a little bit of a busier school. I was made aware of it. My dad, he was in and out, right? He suffered from the same disease that I have, and that took a lot of time away from us and created a lot of chaos with our family, and a big reason why we ended up moving. So as I got a little bit older, there was a period of time where I think I started to get numb to things, but I'd also have a lot of anger outbursts. I'd like yell at my mom, I'd throw shit, like I'd get really angry. And I was always a good kid. Like I didn't like to do things that got me in trouble. I didn't like to disappoint people. I wasn't like the kid that would steal something and feel okay about it. I wanted to like mostly play by the rules and not create too much turbulence in my life. And then I remember like the anger outbursts, and I think it was my dad had done a little time in jail, and then it was like 8th grade where my mom sat me down to have another conversation about how my dad went back to jail, right? And he had already done like 3 to 6 months and had to do the visitations. If you've ever visited anyone that you love in prison, it's not the most fun time, especially when you're a kid, right? And you have to sit across your dad and you can't touch each other and things like that and have these conversations. So I remember her telling me that he went back. And then maybe at that time we had the discussion of it's going to be longer this time, right? And it was think he was sentenced for like 2 to 7 years, right? So he's looking at some time. And I didn't cry. Nothing. I just went numb. That's when I really was like self-preservation mode, right? Where like that doesn't affect me anymore. He's done this enough, you know? I remember, looking out the window as a kid, hours at a time, wondering if he'd be back, things like that. So then he's out of the picture mostly, right? We would go to the prison, we'd visit him, we'd have nice conversations. This place you could actually hug each other and stuff. So, but that's when I started about 8th grade, 9th grade. I started focusing more on hanging out with my friends, getting in trouble a little bit, looking for fights. I loved fighting. Then started experimenting, smoking a little weed, drinking a bit, about 13. And then it was just drinking to get fucked up. It wasn't, there was no like, let's have a few beers and hang out by the campfire. It's like, no, we're going to like black out, throw up tonight. Like, you know, that's the kind of drinking that me and my friends did. But I also found a good group of friends that all wanted to do the same thing. So we were perfect for each other. I never considered myself an athlete, which is funny because I'm probably one of my only friends that became a professional athlete, right?
Yeah.
But I remember not being good at sports. A big part of that was my first school didn't have sports, so I didn't start playing sports till like 4th grade. So the other kids had a leg up on me. Then I didn't feel good and got picked on about it, which made me want to stay away from it. And then it was like, when I got to high school, it was like, I'd rather drive around and smoke weed with my friends and listen to music than go to soccer practice after school. You know, I got more important stuff to do. From there, it escalated, right? It never felt good, though. It was like, I remember on my school vacations, right? My mom didn't have much control. I mean, I'd leave for a school vacation where, like, I used to remember having nice school vacations, and then I would just, like, be blackout at my friend's house for, like, 6-7 days, and I'd always feel this, like, guilt and shame. Like, I knew it didn't sit with me and who I was and everything that I wanted to become, because I still had huge aspirations and dreams, and my mind's always creating things, and I wanted to pursue those things. And then on the other end, I had this drinking and drug thing that I did because that's how I connected with my friends in my social group. And then around 17, my dad got out of jail. I ended up moving in with him. I was having trouble at home because of, you know, the way I had been acting. So I was trying to run away from that. So I switched over to schools. And this is actually when you come into the picture.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can preface this by saying your dad was freshly out of prison, and he met up with a guy who was training with us, Curtis.
Yes.
Who had a cut under his eye. And
Yes.
Your dad's sitting next to him drinking. He goes, "How'd you get that cut?" He goes, "Well, I was practicing MMA." He goes, "Where do they do that up here?" You know? So he goes, "My son really into that. He'd love to come down." And that was the start.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny because me and my dad watched UFC from the very beginning, right? We would go to the movie store. Remember when they had movie stores?
Yeah, I used to watch. They watched that one until it wore out.
Right.
UFC 1.
UFC 1, and then we'd rent every one along the way. So I was familiar with it. I never was, as a kid, I never liked the fake wrestling or anything. I was always into UFC.
Same here.
Real combat sports.
It's about as real as it gets when a guy kicks another guy and his tooth goes into the third row.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, that's the
You
best.
got a 600-pound dude fighting a 180-pound guy. No rounds. And
he kills him. He destroys
the
him.
ref doesn't even know what an arm bar is.
The good old days. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. So, you know, I know your mom. I love your mom. Your dad and I were good friends. But if anybody was predisposed to, you know, this disease of addiction, your mom's heritage is American Indian. A little bit. Is that right?
I think a little bit. We're not. It's not quite confirmed with all these 23andMe and stuff. So I'm not sure. But
what nationality is she?
So she's French. She's Scottish.
Yeah.
We're not sure about the Indian.
Right.
Yeah. She looks Indian, though.
Maybe French, Canadian, Indian, you know.
But she had alcohol problems and drug problems.
Yeah.
But she stopped at 19. She hasn't had a sip of alcohol. But she had serious problems with it. So genetically, yes.
Genetically, she was not able to handle it.
Right.
Your father struggled with it. And then here's you, and you're, you know, so you were a prime candidate for that.
Yes, because there has been a lot of evidence that it is genetic.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right. And I mean, I remember walking around AA meetings when I was a kid, like hanging out in
Yeah.
AA halls. I
Yeah.
think my first AA meeting was when I was 4. I didn't need it then, but then I found myself in there way later. So if I can go back to
Yeah,
kind of
sure.
where we were at. So when my dad got out, I mean, I was just doing my own thing. I was going to school. There'd be times I'd be doing a little bit better, but overall, I was drinking a lot. I was smoking weed every day, all day, when I could afford it. And in high school, it just continued to escalate. And I remember, and I think we may have talked about this at one time, but my dad had some prescription pills, and I knew they had, nice effects. So I wanted to take one. And when I did, I went into his room and I took them. I think I took 2 of them. And I went down to a bathroom that we had on the 2nd floor, and I crushed them up because I knew how to do it, and I snorted them. And then I went to a soccer game. I drove myself there, and I went there and I hung out with kids my age, and I had a great time. I was talking to everyone. I felt good. I didn't tell anybody. And I look back at that moment because I was like a big moment, right? Where like, how much was that 17-year-old kid? Like, how much pain, emotional pain was he in? Where he wanted to do it. He wasn't being peer pressured. He wasn't trying to be cool. He wasn't let's all go smoke weed for the first time together. No one knew.
Nobody knew
except
what
for
was going
me.
on. Yeah.
And I just wanted to feel better.
Yeah.
That's all. And it worked, right? It made me feel better. And that was the void. It filled the void, right? That spiritual void that I had. That I didn't know what to fill it with. And then it escalated from there. I mean, I would do whatever was around. Any pills that you brought around, drinking heavily, whatever. I was down to try it all. And then from there, it was always trying to chase something else to get away from the drugs and alcohol. So that was the move to go to the military. Right. Or something that you have to put extreme level of focus and concentration on and make it so extreme. I have to go to war to get away from drugs and alcohol, right? Like that's crazy. Like that in my mind.
Yeah, one war for another.
I had to. It was like the only way out. And if you want to touch on anything or
no,
I'll keep rolling.
No, keep going, man, because cool. I think that really paints a good picture of like what gets people to a certain place. You know, you've had these childhood experiences of moving around and a void, and now you're going into the military and you're an animal because, you party like an animal. Mm-hmm. Everything you do is so intense, right? It has to be intense because that gives you the feeling. Because like you said before, you've numbed yourself. You could numb yourself. So you can live the life of being numb, or you can live the intense, and you gravitate. Like, I mean, to some extent, I can identify. I don't know if it's to the same degree, but I like the intensity. That's why I love cage fighting.
Right.
Nothing gets me so excited as sitting cage side and watching two people just like a great fight. Like, because I've seen so much. I'm 60 and I've been through so much in my life, I've seen a lot. I've been a lot, done a lot, been around the world like a couple of times, and things just don't get me excited that much. But people fighting and that extreme stuff gets me excited.
For sure.
So you go into the Army, and I mean, you told us about your experiences, but how did that end?
Yeah, so I mean, it escalated when I joined the Army. And then the Army Rangers, I mean, they're notorious for drinking.
Sure.
It's like work hard, play hard, right? Fight hard. That's the lifestyle. So every weekend we're going out, getting wasted,
causing trouble,
getting in fights, like stupid things, And my deployment saved me, right? I went to Afghanistan for 6 months. And that 6 months was the longest that I had been sober from drugs and alcohol since I was 13.
Wow.
Right? That was the longest. I remember I was proud of that.
Yeah.
But I also couldn't wait to get off
And get
at
back to it.
C-130 and drink some beers. I remember our
Yeah.
captain waiting at the airfield with a 30-pack when we got off.
Wow.
Here you go, guys. Like,
Good job.
Good job. And I think I was 20 at the time when I got back. And then I love uppers, right? And like I mentioned earlier, I don't want to get into my drug use too much, right? Because they'll all take you to the same place. But I like uppers. I like cocaine. I like that intensity.
Sure.
Right. That
You're type A.
right. And I discovered that. I was introduced to it by one of my team leaders. And we did it because it gets out of your system quickly, and it can helps you pass. You might be able to pass a drug test easier with cocaine, where marijuana would stay in your system longer. So it was more frequently used. And it got to the point where, I mean, every single weekend, and I just, and then going through different phases of training, and I ended up, it was like a good year, right? Where I'm partying and then I'm training, and or we'd go to one place to train for a couple weeks and then come back. But it was always kind of the same thing. And I was out of control with it. I mean, I couldn't stop. And finally, it just got to the point where I ended up failing a couple drug tests, right? And at that time, they were looking for reasons to take a lot of guys out of the military. We were kind of pulling people out of Afghanistan at the time. So I think there was like 20 guys in my unit that got removed from service for DUIs, for steroids, for cocaine, you name it, right?
Right.
And the captains are like, hey, 10 years ago, everyone was doing steroids and cocaine. Why are you even testing these guys?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it was, they needed to save money. So that was, I had to leave, right? And there was no real, still got an honorable discharge because of what I've done in the military, right? So that was, I guess, good enough. But I was devastated.
Yeah.
I worked so hard to become an Army Ranger. I mean, it's like you said, it's like SEAL training. It's like, there's not a lot of guys that make it. It's elite, right? Like you got to the UFC. Right. And then you get cut because of your own actions, right? That was a hard pill to swallow. And I remember talking to my dad and just, how, I don't want to say disappointed because he wasn't disappointed in me, but he knew the pain that I was in.
Sure. And
he knew what he had been through and the devastation that he had caused in his own life. And I was creating that devastation in my life, right? So I didn't have a plan. I'm out like 21, 22. And from there, it's like, I tried to act like I was happy with it, the situation. You know what? I got because I did my deployment and that was all great. I did some great training. So I was kind of like, you know what? I don't care about that anyway. Like I didn't want to stay in the military. I'm sure I wouldn't have stayed in much longer than my full 4. I mean, I ended up doing like 3, but after that, it was just like, I didn't know what, I was lost, but I also was like, oh, this is great. So I moved back. I move in with my buddy. From there, I meet a girl, things fast forward. We end up in Cape Cod. I'm still partying off and on. I wasn't really doing as many uppers. So I kind of like got my shit together for a while. And that's what I do, right? I was always capable of being successful. And I'd always have these periods of time where I'd reach levels of success and even great levels of success, right? And then I'd tear it all down. And the pain of like going up to that level and then losing it all was just, I mean,
roller coaster,
defeating and trying to build it back up.
Yeah.
So fast forward, I get to the Cape. We live there for a while, and I have my daughter. And along the way, I'm competing in MMA. I am doing well, right? MMA was that thing that would keep me sober for periods of time. I would stay sober for 4 to 8 weeks generally for a fight camp. I'd white knuckle it. I'd be able to have that willpower for a period of time. And then I would pre-plan my relapse. I would buy the drugs that I wanted. I'd get the alcohol I wanted. I would save it. I'd have it in my gear bag.
It's my reward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
don't fight a guy that's looking for his bag. I'm trying to get in and get out. Like, just like an animal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I actually remember thinking that one time, being on top of a kid and ground and pounding him and just couldn't wait to get to the hotel to party. Yeah. And I was like, I heard the refs there. Yeah. Anyway, so it's like, that's sick behavior. And then I would party all night, sometimes for 2 days. Sometimes 3, like going into 3. And I would go from feeling like a top level athlete and extremely confident and having a good relationship with the people around me.
Yep.
To feeling like the worst, can't breathe, I've been smoking cigarettes.
Yep.
Been doing whatever, been up, everyone's mad at me. All my fight purse is gone.
A dual personality or
right.
a dual image.
Lifestyle, image, right.
Complete duality.
And I was really good at hiding it too. Yeah. That was a thing for a long time. I was so good at acting and so good at not letting people, like my immediate circle would know and they would suffer more with me. The outside circle, maybe like my bosses and clients and stuff, would suffer because I'd always be sick or I'd have this excuse or that excuse and I wouldn't always show up.
Would you not show up for work?
I wouldn't show up for work sometimes.
Like where? Like what?
Well, yeah. I know where you're going with this because
this is crazy.
This place, the Fox Run Mall, this was the first job that I had when I got out of the Army. Yeah. I moved to Dover, New Hampshire because I was like, I got a great idea. Let's go live next to a college, but not go to college. And we'll go to all the parties.
Experience all the parties, sure.
Great. So that's what we did.
So you worked
I worked
here
at Olympia Sports.
in this mall.
In the
where
Fox
we are
Run
now.
Mall.
Unreal.
And
Unreal.
Speaking of not showing up and making dumb excuses, I remember one day I was so hungover. We'd been partying all night. And I'm texting my boss in a half daze that I was in a car accident.
You weren't in a car accident.
I mean, it felt like it, but I wasn't.
You were a wreck.
I was a wreck.
But
I was a wreck. But I wasn't in an actual car accident. And she didn't believe me because I had lied so much. How sad is that, right?
Yeah.
She doesn't say, oh, I hope everything's okay. She says, you, like, basically, you're a liar, right? So I go back to work, and I'm just too stubborn to admit, or too ashamed, I should say. Not even stubborn, just ashamed, right? When I do go back to work, and I feel better 3 days later, and I think, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that I was in a car accident. I had to pretend I was in a car accident.
You got a sling on.
I was in there for like a week going like this. Hey, what's up? Like I have a stiff neck. I have whiplash.
That's great.
Friday night going back out.
Yeah.
Right?
All happened right here in the Fox Run Mall.
So I lived right down the road.
Wow.
And then, so ended up having my first daughter. And before I had her, I was like, wow, this is going to be the thing that turns it around, where I'm gonna do better and I'm gonna show up for her.
Yeah.
Because my values are always there. I wanted to be this person, right? Even when I was drinking and doing drugs, I mean, I'd do dumb illegal shit sometimes, but I wasn't like a person that would be stealing from people. And everyone's different, right? It takes us to all different places. It takes you places that you never thought you would go. But deep down, I had a certain moral compass to a point, right? And certain values, and it was so hard not living up to those values that I had for myself. So I was like, my daughter's born. It was amazing. I was so happy. The potential to have a family and everything was there, right? Me and my ex, we had our own issues, right? The alcohol and the drugs would amplify that at times, but had our own things as well. Fast forward, I wasn't able to stop, right? So I'd go out, but I wouldn't want to come home because I never wanted her to see me, even as a baby. And I couldn't face the shame of being in my home high and drunk or whatnot. So I'd stay out. I'd be gone for 2 days, right? Same things that happened to me as a child. The cycle is now starting to repeat itself, which is scary. Eventually, my ex left. I mean, my daughter was like 6 months old. Because I just wouldn't stop, right? And the ultimatum was stop or we got to leave. And that's what happened, right? I didn't stop, left. That was another extremely devastating and painful time of my life where I stayed And I just remember coming home from work and the baby stuff was around. There'd be pictures still. And just getting fucked up and stumbling around and like crying early in the morning and just like that such pain.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to deal with it. And that's when things really escalated for me.
Sure.
I mean, I was running out to different places. Yeah. I mean, I didn't have the strength to, and it wasn't made easy for me to see my daughter. So there was a series of things that I kind of had to do.
Frustration.
So I couldn't take those step-by-step processes like to be able to see her. So it just brought me to like this super low point. And again, I didn't know how to deal with it except for what I've always done and what always worked for me, which was drugs and alcohol, right? I know it makes me feel better. I mean, I can still think back to times where before the baby was gone, I'd be driving down the road and I would be talking to myself and be like, it's not too late. Like, you can turn around. Like, you don't have to go drink. You don't have to go do the drugs. Right? Like, having these conversations, these battles with myself as I'm driving, and then just telling myself, once you get there and you do that first line, you're going to feel better. You're not going to give a anymore, right? And to not care about your family like that, it's a sad place to be.
Yeah.
Right? In that moment. And then when she left, it was just devastating for me. I bounced around a lot. I moved to different places. I was working different jobs. Life was pushing me around. And I would destroy something. I'd just end up somewhere. And then I'm like, all right, I got to make the most of this. Right? And I always can find success. I could always find a job. I could always find friends. I could always do that. I know how to move in different areas.
Sure. In
different places. And eventually it got so bad where I just didn't have any other options. And I remember this, one of the last times I had a couple relapses, but I'd been in and out. I tried AA, been in and out, sober for periods of time. You know, I'll only drink beer. I tried everything, right? I'll only do cocaine on Tuesdays and Saturdays, whatever. You know,
between 8 and 4.
Between 8 and 4. Yeah. But I tried everything, right, to control this thing that has control over me.
Yeah.
Right. I was trying to control. How can I fit this into my life still?
Right.
Because I like to do it a bit.
Like a friend. How do you keep him in your life when he's just screwing your life up tremendously?
Right. And it's like that thing, you don't want to let it go. It's a relationship.
Yeah.
Right. And it's something that's always there for me. I know how to get it. And it makes me, it does its job to a point till it doesn't.
Yeah.
I remember just like, it was just this crazy thing. I stayed at this hotel. I'd been partying all night. I had no money left. I was like stuck. There was like the worst snowstorm ever. I was in my little Honda. I was trying to drive from this hotel because I couldn't afford to stay there from another night. I was all by myself, right? My mom, like, I wasn't really welcome at my sister's anymore. I didn't have a place to go. I exhausted a lot of those options. And I was just so desperate. I was so angry. And I was like, I couldn't take, you know, I wanted to fucking drive off the road because like, then at least someone would feel bad for me maybe. And I'm glad no one felt bad for me because I had to take a step myself towards truly seeking recovery.
Was that when you submitted? Was that the turning point?
That was
a turning point?
That was a major turning point.
Yeah.
Right? I still remember like I had a little drugs left. I never would have done this, throwing them on the ground, like flipping out.
And what did you do? Did you go to a meeting?
So what I
did
did
you reach
was
out?
I managed to get my car up this big ass hill to the Manchester VA.
Yeah.
And then they don't have like a stay-in program. So they had to take me in an ambulance all the way from the VA. I didn't even have like hardly any clothes.
Yeah.
I had like a Fight Club cutoff t-shirt, you know, pink.
Yeah.
I still remember what I was wearing.
Fight Club. What a picture that must have been.
Oh man, I looked like I was part of Fight Club when I got there. Yeah, that was rough.
Oh
that was a rough look for me. So I got brought down to Brockton and I joined a program. I was in detox for like a week. And then, this is a crazy experience, but they had no room and this happens sometimes, unfortunate. I think there's a lot of different options.
This is inpatient
Yeah,
treatment?
this is inpatient treatment. Yeah, so I went to detox, but there was no beds for the next program yet. Right. So my only option was going upstairs on the psych unit floor. And I lived there for 3 weeks.
Wow.
And it was crazy. I mean, I had to like
literally
remove. It was crazy.
Literally great psych ward.
They had to remove. I had to like take my shoelaces off, and like I was one of like 2 guys that were there for drug addiction, but just in this holdover. And my option was to leave. Like I could have left detox. Someone could have picked me up.
Yeah, it was not. It was voluntary.
It was voluntary.
Yeah, this is not mandated.
Right, it's not mandated. So I could have walked out easily, but I didn't trust myself to.
Yeah. Part
of me wanted to. I had friends that were willing to let me stay with them. And I was like, no, I have to do this. Yeah, right? So I stayed in there for 3 weeks. That was an experience. But for me, it was like, you know what? I'm just going to make the most of this. I do a workout in my room every day. I was training the guy. I was doing mitts with my bunkmate.
Nice.
I was showing him boxing and stuff, whatever, making the most of it. But that was a tough time. And then from there, I went to 2 different programs in the VA, and it lasted 5 months.
Wow.
So one of my fights at Combat Zone, I was living at the VA, doing almost all my training by myself.
Who did you fight?
Mitch Whitesell.
Oh, yeah, Mitch Whitesell, that fight, yeah.
He was like, yeah.
He's
been around for a long time.
He destroyed him.
I ended up destroying him, but he actually did a lot better than maybe he should have.
Yeah,
because
you were living
right.
You were living.
I was training at the VA. I was just doing whatever, lifting weights. I was. They would let me. I'd have a little curfew, but I could get out for like 2 practices a week if someone would pick me up. I didn't have a car. I don't even know what happened to that car. See,
anybody knows,
I don't even know if anyone's seen a Honda license plate 291
with a pink Fight Club T-shirt in the back.
No, I got that still.
Oh, you still have that? Yeah.
So I stayed at the program, and then towards the end of the program, right, they try to do their best to help you find the next step. I moved in with this kid that I made friends with at the VA, but he was also a drug addict and alcoholic, and we moved to East Boston. He had a place over there, and that was probably the worst 3 weeks of my life. Hard relapse.
Yeah.
And the worst part about it was, right, I was 5 months sober. I'd done a lot of work, and I truly wanted to be sober. My plan wasn't to come out and like, hey, let's do that all over again. Because I had started visiting. I mean, there was like 5 months so I didn't see my daughter.
Yeah.
Right. So I was visiting my daughter every other weekend, spending time with her. Right. I was starting to gain some of these things back. I got an awesome job for a title boxing club in the city. I thought I was the man. Right. But I hadn't built up enough of a strong sobriety.
And your tolerance must have been really low. I mean,
yeah.
You go back to partying the way you were.
Right.
And that's going to just wreak havoc.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
Yeah, very.
It's really dangerous.
I lost my cousin's kid passed from substance abuse after being out for a while and coming back and going hard.
You hear about that all the time, you know. Yeah. They relapse for a day. Their first times.
Yeah.
Because we go back to what we were doing before.
Right.
Yeah, so
how did you get back? How did you get back to...
I remember, that I was brought to my knees with drinking and drugs. There was a day I spent like $3,000 like on drugs. Right. It was insane. I tried to go to this like sober house on the South Shore. I was there for like 5 days or something. A friend that I knew from the VA had invited me down. I was out of money for like, until I had like a paycheck coming from like past work in like a week, but I needed somewhere to go for a period of time. Yeah. So I kind of went down there and then I made a little money down there. I worked on a trash truck for like 3 days. And I still remember this. It was like, I think it was the fall. And it was a cold, rainy, nasty day. And hey, shout out to anyone that works on a trash truck, because that type of work is not meant for the faint of heart. Jumping on and off that truck and loading those cans all days. But I remember I was standing on the back, riding on the back of the truck, and it was raining. And I was I was taking my face so I wasn't behind cover, and I was sticking it into the rain. And I was just like, you do drugs, you become a trash man. You do drugs, you become a trash man. This is what fucking happens.
Yeah, you
This
take
is
the
what
pain.
this is what happens, right? You thought
Take
you were
your
you thought you were
punishment.
the man going and working the city and doing this and that, and like you weren't ready for that. Right? So I had that conversation with myself. Went back home, more drinking, more drugs for like a couple days, went to detox. After I went to detox, I didn't want to go back through the program. I've seen too many guys do this, right? And the VA is great, but it also gives an opportunity to certain guys, right, to not jump into a program and really challenge themselves emotionally, because it's kind of like a crutch. It's like, okay, cool, I can stay back in here for 6 months, get, my 3 meals a day.
Go back
They
and
give me a
forth.
job, right? Bounce back and forth, right? That's not what I was trying to do. So I was like, I'm not going. They offered me the program. I'm not going back to the program. Did like 2-3 days of detox, and then I moved into a sober house. And the sober house was great. I mean, I learned a lot there. I practiced the 12 steps of AA. And I will touch on AA briefly. I think AA is a great program and a great community. It's not something that I continue to do regularly or that I even dove full force into at any time. But I do think it's a proven method to get and stay sober. And I'm all for anything that's a proven method. It's plenty of people, hundreds of thousands of people have been sober through it. So if you are struggling and you haven't tried an AA meeting, I know a lot of great people in AA. Some of my best friends. Try it. Yeah. And even just meeting up after, like I'll go to dinner with one of my sober friends and we can talk about these things and he can relate. Sometimes when I tell people stories, they're like, I can't relate to that.
Yeah.
I'm glad they can't. So I think it's important to make those connections in sobriety. And that I went to a lot of meetings. I did the 12 steps and I stayed in that sober house for about 10 months. That's when I fought on the Contender Series.
Wow.
I might be the first guy to fight out of a sober house. I didn't want to admit it at the time.
Yeah.
Right, on TV and stuff, that I was living in a sober house. I mean, I had to get like a written curfew to go to Vegas and fight.
Wow.
From my, the house person. I would, every day I'd take the bus or the train or whatnot to do my training and stuff. And then I moved out of the sober house, moved to Dorchester, lived there for a little bit, and I relapsed again. And I remember doing it, right, where I had been like 10 months sober and I still hadn't completely surrendered to alcoholism. I would do weird things, like I would text people that I knew partied and did drugs, right? And I would even sometimes plan to go out and party with them. It was like this premeditated thing, but I just kind of fantasize with it, get my heart racing a little bit.
Yeah, get you a little
and then I would
juice.
like not answer them and just not respond. Like, no, not
Get some juice going.
Right. Yeah. Just the idea of it. And then I remember just being there and being alone and just not having enough to do and just me just not able to sit with myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the most challenging parts.
Be alone with yourself.
Right.
Yeah. Your own thoughts.
Be in your own thoughts.
And because you got to look at yourself and you got to think about who you are and what this is all about, what everything's about. And that can be hurt. That can hurt.
Yeah, it can be very painful.
Yeah.
And more gets pulled up the longer you stay sober,
Yeah.
I found. And I just remember feeling emotions and sitting there and just being like, felt so uncomfortable in my own skin that I couldn't stand it. I couldn't sit there and just, I'm just like thinking, is this what people actually feel like?
Yeah.
Because I didn't deal with emotions for almost 15 years between drugs and alcohol and just numbing myself and being distracted constantly. So I never sat there and felt that. And that is just so uncomfortable. And it got to the point where I finally was just like, I hit this kid up. I made sure he could have the drugs. I like made sure everything was set up, right? Because I wanted it. If I was going to relapse, I was going to do it right.
Yeah.
always. Like I wanted to have everything set up.
Intense.
Yes. So let's go for a ride.
Yeah.
Right. So I did that. And then it was like, this was a brief period of my life where I had some control over it. Not much. And it would always be short-lived, right? Where I would show myself, see, you can do that, and you can bounce back for like a week.
Yeah.
Right? It's like prove to myself,
you're invincible.
Do it tonight, and then don't do it for a week, so that you can prove to yourself that you get to do it.
Yeah. These deals you make with yourself.
Right.
These bargaining.
Bargaining.
It's crazy how you bargain with yourself.
For sure. So,
Negotiations.
Negotiations.
Is what I call it. Like when I know I've got to do something, I don't negotiate certain things. Like the dojo, my business.
Yes.
It's non-negotiable. I'm
Right.
going to show up.
That's it.
But then you're negotiating with this demon.
That doesn't fit your lifestyle.
Yeah.
So that was my last relapse. And it lasted for about maybe 4 or 5 months. But it didn't get super bad in the sense that I maintained a job.
Yep.
I was dating. I had some money. Still didn't have a car, my license. I don't even know if I had a bank account, but I had some money.
Yep.
Right. And it was like, I was able to do it and then still show up to work. And even like, it was a weird time where like, I'd even stay up all night and still go to work and stuff. And then, a big turning point was, I met my wife, right? And we drank together and had some fun and stuff and going out, but it wasn't long before she realized that I had a problem.
Yeah.
And before I was admitting to her that I had a problem. And I was ready to surrender, right? That's the word, surrender.
Yeah.
Because when you're a fighter your whole life, you think you're supposed to fight.
You don't submit.
You don't submit.
Yeah.
You don't tap. You don't wave the white flag.
Right.
You're not going to do that. So I had to realize that I couldn't beat this demon. I had to surrender to it. And I remember, she brought me to an AA meeting. We went to one. She's not sober. She still drinks a bit now.
Yeah.
And sat down with me during the meeting. And then I kind of continued to pursue that afterwards. And so she was a big part of it. We're just like realizing that I realized early on the potential that we had with our chemistry and our relationship. And then also the other significance of I really liked my job. I was a head coach at the title boxing that I currently own now. They brought me there, right, to be the head coach there. And I was looking at losing that job because I didn't show up a couple of times. And they were like this close to just like the guy who's my current partner now.
And now you own.
Me and him own this club together, right? Full circle. They're about to like, that's it. We can't do this again.
Yeah.
They've done it with me a couple of times. And I knew where it was going. I had done it so many times. I had learned a lot about myself and the disease. When I was at the VA, I used to go to the classes, and they were so interesting to me. I thought I was in college. Yeah. I was like taking notes, and I'm like, wait, this is me.
You've been smart. I always think of you as a real smart dude just from talking with you. Like, oh, you're not, and that's the thing. I mean, if you could understand your brain and understand why it is, you'll figure it out.
Right.
So
that's the thing. I really dove into the understanding. I learned a lot about it. And it was just about finally waving the white flag, submitting to the thing that I knew would take away everything that I loved.
Yeah.
That would kill me for sure at some point. And I'd already rolled the dice way too many times for my comfort.
It's funny you say that. Rolling the dice.
Rolling the dice. Yeah. And I think that's when things really turned.
Can I ask you, aside from your wife, who wasn't your wife at the time, she was your girlfriend, who did you lean on? Who did you lean on for support? Because the one thing I know is you can't do this alone. If you're alone and you take your wife, current wife, out of the picture and you're dealing with this alone, you don't win.
You don't stand a
have
chance.
you have to submit, and you have to lean on people, and you have to fight. This is not. I call it like an independent fighter who trains in his garage and has no coach and has no clue what he's doing. Nobody researching his fighter and going out there independent. He thinks he's good. 1 in a million if you can win that first amateur fight, because you're not that good. I mean, and you've never had any real training. So how do? You need coaches. You need people. So who did you lean on?
And that's it, right? You're defenseless, and if you're just sitting alone with your demon, they're going to win every time. It might take more time than others. But I leaned on a lot. I leaned on the program of AA.
Yeah.
I made a lot of friends there. I made some great friends. One of them, he was in my wedding party.
Yeah.
Right at my sober house that I lived at. We were texting each other yesterday. Right? So I had guys that when you're feeling this way, they said, call me first.
Yes.
Before you relapse, just give me a ring. Right? So there was a few times I'm feeling a certain way. Let's get on the phone. Let's go grab some food, man. Let's get some food. Let's hang out. So I found that was a huge support. I dove into therapy for a little bit.
Yeah.
I had a therapist that I talked to who had been suffered from addiction, right? So she understood the disease, which was helpful for me.
And who doesn't need somebody to talk to? We
talk to.
We all do.
Right. There was a lot of literature that I read.
Yep.
Different daily habits, stuff of that nature. But I would say my biggest support was the AA community. But then what I found from there was a larger, broader community of people that want to be healthy physically and mentally.
Right.
In turn, I attracted that and created a new circle. Unfortunately, I have a lot of friends that I used to party with. They don't hit me up to go out to lunch and just to have a conversation. They're still doing the same stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And that's okay. That's their life. And I do hope the best for them. But I had to form a new circle. And then as I went, I got further and further away. I rely on a higher power. I believe in the energy of the universe. What you put in is what you get back. If you treat people a certain way, others are going to treat you a certain way. If you live a certain lifestyle, you're just going to attract that and create that, and you can create your own destiny in a sense. And then I continued to find things that I could add to I call it like a spiritual toolkit.
Sure.
Things that I could use because before all I had was fighting. That's the only thing that made me feel better.
Right. And
it worked for times, and I'd get in great shape, and it would keep me away for periods, for bouts. And then what? I have to schedule a cage fight just to stay sober? That's crazy,
How long's that going to last?
Yeah, how's that long's that?
One injury and you're back to being...
That's it.
Yeah.
So it couldn't rely on that because it wasn't always going to be there for me. Couldn't rely on any individual person because circumstances in life changes.
They won't always be
They're
there
not
for
always
you.
going to be there for you.
You got to rely on you.
Yeah, you have to rely on you and trust that there's a greater purpose and a greater reason and that day to day, and then create that network and then add things in, right? Where it's like, I'm into the breath work now. I do the cold showers and the cold plunges. I like to read.
Yeah.
I love coaching and the art of coaching. I love business. I love playing with my kids. And actually, you want to talk about a spiritual connection, actually being engaged and wanting to play with my little girl.
Yes.
Instead of just pretending and being distracted by my phone. Even the days I'm tired, right? When I go home and I'm like, I don't want to read a book tonight. I don't want to read Dr. Seuss. I can barely talk anymore. I've been talking all day. But to go into a room and say, this is your job, right? It's not about relax.
It's non-negotiable.
It's non-negotiable, right? Where this is your job. And all of those things have just created a stronger, filled my spiritual fulfillment.
Yeah.
Right. And it's funny. I'll share this with you. This says spirit fulfilled. Okay.
That's cool.
On my hands there.
I love it.
Okay. You know whose handwriting that is? It's my dad's.
Your dad's.
Okay.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah. And when we went to my dad passed, for those who don't know, from the same disease that I suffer. And when he died, I was 5 months sober. So that was
Huge.
That was a devastating time, and I was in a very vulnerable place because I had been 5 months sober before and relapsed, 9 months sober,
Yeah,
6 months
yeah.
sober, right? And in my mind, I was at that time. There was times shortly after he died where I was going to relapse. I like had it pre-planned and meditated, and then couldn't be my own power, right? It wasn't my own willpower. I got pushed in the direction to not just continuously a day at a time. And my mindset was that I could relapse and everyone would forgive me. They'd feel bad that my dad died.
Yeah.
Right. And that I'm a drug abuser and alcoholic, and that they'll understand. Right. It was honestly like, this is, if you're going to relapse, you got to do it quick.
Another negotiation.
Right. And then it was like a month, and then I was like, oh man, now it's been too long since he passed.
Nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to relate it.
Right. You can't connect them as much anymore. And I mean, I think the reality was, though, that I knew was that was my outcome, or that's how it was going to end like that for me.
Right.
And I was always like, I need to break the cycle. I'd even talk about this stuff when I was drinking and doing drugs. I would talk about sobriety.
Yeah.
In an excited way, where I wanted to and planned to get sober. And I just couldn't. And I'm so lucky I didn't die before I got to live my plan out.
Right.
So that was a challenging time, and that it brought up tons of emotions over the years, because me and him partied together. We did it, you know?
I know. And emotions that needed to be addressed.
100%.
Because you can't keep running from it, because that's what eats you up. So you got to, and you faced, and I remember I was there at that time.
I know.
You know, I mean,
you were one of the first people I called.
He meant a lot to me.
I know he did.
He did. I miss him.
He loved you, man.
It's mutual, brother. And, you know, we probably, I mean.
he had us cracking up, huh?
You know, every time somebody goes off and won't shut up, I just
give him the word
father
limit.
Sitting in the front seat of my car with somebody in the back, and him just putting his head in his hands and just screaming, "Shut the!"
This guy we were with just wouldn't stop
God.
talking. I think my dad gave him a word limit at one point, where he was like, "Listen, you got 100 words left for this ride," and he's counting. Guy doesn't stop.
You know, let me tell you something. I have a friend who helps. He was a high-intensity car salesman, and he really went full bore, like had houses, cars, boats, Winnipesaukee. He lost it all, drugs and alcohol. And he now hustles for recovery. He's the guy, when somebody says, I have a problem, I say, let me call this guy. And he will get on. He's a pit bull, and he's a great guy. And he loved your father. He tells me, we talk about your father in the greatest, what a great guy he was, you know. So sad that he passed way too early. But, you know, that doesn't diminish who he was as a person. And his spirit connected with a lot of people, and really just, you know, there was a lot of love that came
And he
out
was
of him.
fighting, right? And that's, I
He was
share
a
his
fighter.
story. He was fighting to the end.
Always.
And, you know, back to this tattoo.
Yeah.
When we cleared out his house after he passed, there was a lot of AA literature there.
Yeah.
He was actively trying to stay sober. And he had a pros and cons list. And in the pros, cons of being sober, he had written spirit fulfill. And that's where this same handwriting comes from.
Wow.
And that's the journey I'm on, honestly. That's what I'm trying to do, is trying to fulfill my spirit. But now it's greater than me. When you start to build a family, when you start to build your own tribe, and then the business and stuff, where it's like, now I'm trying to touch more people. Where the Army was, I had to do it because I had to run away from New Hampshire, and I had to do it, right? And then MMA, I had to. I truly believe that I had to do it. I was fighting to get away from my alcoholism and addiction. But when you start doing other things that bring more people into the picture, now you're not just doing it for yourself, right? And I'm a lifelong martial artist, and I will compete again, but that takes second to my family and the community that my business has built. I mean, we have 10 guys working there. We have 400 members. We
It's
do
amazing.
different things there all the time, community events.
I love that you have the perspective that you have, and I love the arc of where you are now, where you came from. I think we got to wrap. This is going to go on till 10. It's getting dark outside.
Oh, I missed my whole shift.
I know that you are, but at least you're not going to go tell me we're in a car accident.
Yeah.
But I have a couple of quick questions, man. I mean, I could talk to you all day, and I know I love talking to you. Like your dad. When I talked to your dad, time would run on, and I could talk to him forever. Let me ask you this: where do you see yourself in 5 years? Doing
5
the same
years?
thing?
I'll either be doing the same thing, just at a bigger level.
Yep.
Or maybe something different. I mean, what I do know is that I will continue to build my family with my wife.
Maybe another kid?
Yes, God willing.
Yeah.
We might have a couple more.
Great.
We might have a whole team.
Great.
Yeah, it just depends how much money I can make
to
support these kids. Yeah.
I know. It's still, they still cost me.
Yeah, right.
But it's great. I mean, what else do I want to live for?
For sure.
This is to provide for my kids. They're pretty self-sufficient, but every chance I get to help them, I do, and I know.
And I also see myself maybe building my business. I love business. That's like my new kind of form of competition. I love how it works and all the moving parts of it and stuff. That keeps me moving these days.
Yeah.
So I want to be involved in business, whether it's still title boxing or it's another business. It's always going to be based around health and fitness. I wouldn't take $1 million a year to go work some job that I didn't believe in.
That's awesome. So I guess we'll wrap it up, but I want to give you an opportunity to talk about, your social media, where people can find your business. You mentioned it, Title Boxing in Watertown, Mass. Any sponsors you have? And I know you have the Kill brand.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about that, let's talk about that before we wrap it up.
For sure. Title Boxing Club in Watertown. Stop by sometime, take a class if you guys are in the area. We do boxing, MMA, striking, strength and conditioning classes as well. Shout out to my sponsor, OVN, sponsor Kill. We got Kill right here, so that's my brand. That's about killing anything negative in your life. You won't be able to buy anything on the store right now because I'm pausing it right now.
Yep.
I'm really, really focused on my business, my title boxing business, and building that. Kill's on the back burner, but something that I'll bring out again when the time's right. But the message is the same.
Yeah.
Right. You
Kill
gotta
your demons.
You gotta kill your demons, kill your anxieties, kill PTSD, kill anything that doesn't serve you in life, that doesn't allow you to grow. Get rid of it. And I'll say that to people that if you're watching this and you don't have serious drug and alcohol problems, but you don't think it fits in your life, cut that shit out.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think it's almost worse sometimes. I have to be sober. I mean, I don't have to. I could walk across the street and go drink a beer right now, right? But if I don't stay sober, I will die. I'll end up back in the psych ward or I'll be in jail, right? Those are kind of my options. But there's other people that can crack a six-pack a night, right? Then they don't want to play with their kids. Then they're, not doing their best at work. They're looking forward to the weekend or the 2 vacations a year. You're going to settle for less for the rest of your life. Which I think I'm fortunate that I had to be pushed extreme to the other side. But take a look at yourself. And if there are things in your life that don't fit what you want to be or what you're trying to become or is holding you back or is negative, just find a way to cut it out.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's great. It's a great thing that you say. I mean, I can have a couple of beers and not have a problem. I've had problems in the past,
Right.
But you know what? I stopped drinking for 5 months every year. I haven't had a drink since January 1st. And even then I have a glass of wine or at the most. I'm fortunate that I'm part of that population.
Yes.
And a lot of my friends can't. But even
if I could, I would.
Yeah. During the winter months though, it doesn't serve me any purpose. So I get rid of it because it just makes me more lethargic and the lack of sunshine. So yeah, kill whatever you can achieve more of what you want if you kill those things.
Yeah, whatever's holding you back. Right.
Yeah, man. Great. Well, brother, I love you.
I love
your
you
family.
too, man.
It's great talking to you. And, you know, we got a lot more history to make together.
100%.
And I just can't wait to see what the future
started.
holds for you.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, thank you, brother. All right, that's the continuum today, man. Thanks for joining us. My buddy Scotty producing this. I appreciate it.
Scott.
Scott Millet's the man. Great studio. And, yeah, thanks for coming in again. And that's the continuum for today.